Good morning, fam. I'm coming to you live. Actually, not live. I mean, I'm live now, but when you're watching this, it's not live because it's recorded. But live from Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, where today I will be doing a training at I think it's called the National Sheriff's Association's annual conference. So, it was a last minute thing. So I need to study for it. But this morning I read in the Gospels again, which is where I'm at, as you know. And one of the neat things about doing the chronological reading through the Bible is that when you get to the Gospels, it kind of weaves the stories in together from the four different Gospels, and it gives you a more complete picture of the events. And sometimes it's very insightful, and that's the case today because the readings that I did today brought me to all four Gospels, and it was telling the story of the events around when Jesus fed the 5,000 and walked on the water. Those two things that we're very familiar with. But what preceded those was that Jesus was doing miracles, and it's pretty interesting. I think it's in Mark chapter 6, I think it is. A couple times it said in there that the crowds were running to him, and so these people, massive crowds of people, were urgently seeking him out, primarily to be healed, because that's what he was doing, and that's what people were seeking. But also he was teaching them, right? And so today's readings start with the knowledge of all of this happening, getting to Herod. And Herod's the guy who killed or had John the Baptist killed. And so it tells that story. And then it says Jesus went to a lonely place to pray. And then that's when the 5,000 ran and kind of descended on him. And they were there. He was teaching them and all of that. And it's getting towards the end of the day. And Jesus asks, I think it was Philip, said, hey, where can we go to get food for all of these people? And then it says in John's gospel, it says that Jesus did that testing him because he knew what he was going to do. But it's neat because the whole point there is that Jesus is setting this expectation, right? Hey, we've got thousands of people here. How are we going to feed them? And so they realize they have this issue now that they can't really do anything about. And so he's like, well, hey, go see who's got food. Let's go. Maybe we can collect food for everybody. And they come back, well, there's this little kid and he's got 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. What are we going to do with that? Just, well, let's start with that, right? And so he says, hey, have everybody sit down by 50s, by hundreds, something to that effect. They all sat down on the green grass. And Jesus blessed the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, started breaking them apart and then handing them to the disciples in baskets, and the disciples went and passed them out. And of course, as we all know, that all 5,000 of those people there ate, were satisfied, and they had food left over. After that, everybody's worn out. Jesus goes to a place to pray again. The disciples, this was the next day, they're out on the lake or the sea there, and the waves were crashing. It's a pretty rough time out in the sea, and Jesus decides to take a walk out there, right? And when they see him, they think they didn't know it was Jesus. They thought he was a ghost. And then when they realized it was Jesus, that's when Peter says, hey, tell me to come out to you, as he did. And we all know that Peter got distracted by the crashing waves and all of that around him. He began to sink, and then Jesus lifted him up. told him if he had faith, if he had belief, then he wouldn't have sunk. Then he gets into the boat, and then immediately the sea is calm. And this whole series of miraculous things that Jesus did were things to set up the fact and demonstrate the fact that he is God. And whatever is going to come next is something that we need to pay attention to, because he's not just here doing these tricks and healing people and all of that. He's the Messiah. And that's what these miracles are setting up. Starts with John the Baptist being beheaded, the one who was calling and preparing the way for the Messiah. And now the Messiah has come.